excellent. Excellent. Okay. Now we're heading off. Now I was going to try to find a couple of mobile phone seatbelt camera today, but looking at the map, there's no reports on Waze, and sometimes that can be an indication that no one's just reported it recently, and sometimes it can be a indication that it's been moved. There's actually a big long orange streak, which I can imagine when they remove the cameras that they hold up the traffic for a period of time. So packing it up, folding it up and putting it on a trailer and removing it. So I don't see it being an instantaneous just get into the car and move off like you can like mobile speed cameras. Anyway, so not coming up on the map, so I'm going to call it quits rather than driving around. Now, I really don't like going out for a drive just to get these mobile phone seatbelt cameras. Oh, geez, that was close. I think they're a bit spooked now. But yeah, that white car went into the centre, and the other white car came from the other lane to go in the centre. Neither car has right of way in that situation. Both cars have to give way. So, pretty close. Luckily that woman with all the kids in the car put the brakes on. Okay, now getting back home again. Now that's a little bit tricky. What I think I'll do is I'll head down to Darebin Road, is it? And I'll head across through that way and through Ivanhoe, and then back up to whichever way the road takes me. How does that sound? Free. I'm free today. Good about it. Now, one of the things I think about in the future is I'm actually looking forward to robo-taxis. Are you looking forward to robo-taxis? I'm getting older. I reckon it'll take another 10 years before they really become a full-fledged public transport service. And then things will change. If the government can turn around and put a fleet of robo-taxis out, you don't need buses, you don't need trains. They pick you up from your house, they drop you off from your house. I think GMH said they were aiming for $1 American, which is about $1.50 Australian per kilometre. On my estimates, that's about 25% less than taxis. Now that's still too expensive. Short trips, maybe not so expensive, but longer trips like into the city, but you could get the robo-taxi up to the train and then catch the train. Now Musk has turned around and said operational costs for his robo-taxis 20 cents a mile, 30 cents a kilometre. That's just total rubbish. You've got to take into account the car needs to be replaced probably every 200,000 kilometres. This expensive equipment. They want to make a killing. They're going to actually probably jump into bed with another third party, each putting their margins on. So I don't really see it coming in at a low cost. Now if the government turned around and said we're going to provide this at a profit, just instead of making a loss, let's provide it at a break even. I mean, of course they're not going to do that. Governments are just like companies. All organisations are companies at the end of the day, just in a different shape or accounting form. So, but imagine if they did, because right now public transport is subsidised hugely, half of the ticket, maybe even far more than half the ticket, or half the cost. So if you have a look, everybody who's driving is actually paying for the public transport system. Everybody who's taking the public transport is getting subsidised at least 50%, maybe even 75%. This is not particularly fair. So if we have a fairer system, a better system. But a couple of things that I find, for example, a number of roads, buses go along, they pull over. The government got rid of the bays so that the buses don't pull over into the bays anymore. So here, when the bus pulls over, picks up people, no, it blocks the whole lane. So buses have become a nuisance on the road. But we do need public transport services. But imagine if there was no need for the bus to stop and block the path of the traffic. The traffic would just flow beautifully. Trams are even worse. They're horrendous. I mean, and if you have a look at them, they've just populated, they've got platforms in the middle of the road. Now that's fair enough for disabled people, but what if the disabled people could just easily get a robo-taxi that was suited to their needs, took them where they wanted to? That just opens up a whole bunch of new opportunities. So I see robo-taxis. For myself, I'm 67. I look around me and most people are driving in their 80s, so I've probably got another 20 years, probably 90, and then some less so. I'm an anxious person. I'm admitted on the road, so I suspect that my driving days are less than probably 90. So yeah, in 20 years' time, there'll be hopefully robo-taxis enabling us to be quite independent and able to get around down to the local shops. So my other alternative to that, I don't have really deep pockets, but one option that I like the idea of, I hate apartments, I hate shared blocks, there's always problems. Apartments are fine, but turn around when they want to update the foyer or some facilities in there, it's a shared cost across everybody and you have no control over it. And based on what I've seen in real estate, they employ people they know. When I say know, it could be a subdivision of the same company. They don't try to reduce your costs. I tried to get one real estate agent to print their own brochures on colour paper, $1 a brochure, so print 20 off because you don't get 20 people visit, and then print what you need. But instead, no, they'd print 200 pages at $100 or something, 100 plus more dollars. And why? Because at the end of the day, it's not their cost, they pass that on. And in fact, often it's a profit centre. For example, they may not actually make a profit on it, but for example, the billboard companies can print them off and provide them with free billboards. So they actually get, you've seen it, you drive around, you see the real estate agents, details on sporting. So they're plastered up there, they're doing a community service with sporting boards around the place. But that's really advertising for them. And they're getting it free of charge. They're getting it off the back of the homeowners who are selling their properties. They're not paying for it. So they're actually getting free advertising at your expense. So at the end of the day, if they don't have to reduce costs, if there's a way to do something better or cheaper, there's no guarantee they will. So what you've got to do is look at it is it in their benefit to turn around and do something? Not yours, theirs. They're a business. They run a business. So you have to look at that and then make sure that you look after your interest. And it's pretty hard because ultimately they've got the power base, they've got the experience, they've got a pool of people coming in and out. It's not a large pool, and that could be easily replaced by some other organisation in the future, and I believe it will be replaced by some organisation in the future. Google tried, but unfortunately for Google, they tried too early. Because you see, Google gets paid a lot of money from real estate agents. They try to put a real estate service into place. What happens? The real estate agents stop using them. And if that happens, they lose a lot more money because it's going to take time for their service to take off. So basically it got closed down. And that's how I see it now. It might have been different. But Google, with all their facilities, really in Melbourne, there's probably 1,000, 2,000 real estate agents around Melbourne. It's not a great pool of organisations to coordinate with. So, and all you need is probably a couple of hundred, and you have a large enough market share to do something. But I've found, and I've tried to build a couple of real estate services. Business was originally called Online Real Estate, and it was done on dial-up modems, and I was actually getting more people coming to me than coming to the real estate agents. So it could happen, and I had one group, and they had about 100 agents all working together, but they didn't want to do anything. And as 100 agents all working together across Melbourne, they could have had the advantage. Now keep in mind, when realestate.com started, it was $20. I think it was $20 a month for about 20 properties. So the cost of advertising on realestate.com was nothing. I don't know what it is now, but I'd suspect it's probably $200 for a single property. So now, mind you, the original creators of realestate.com almost got to the point where they were running out of cash and did sell it off to the News Limited. So at the end of the day, their strategy was build something and maybe sell it. Maybe that was their strategy, and they made their money by doing that. So good luck to them. They had the right contacts, the right approach. I certainly did not have the right approach. I'm not a great businessman. I'm a good computer consultant. I look after my clients. I put their interests in front of mine. I'm not the typical business person who said, keep in mind your business has to succeed because you have to support your family. And so basically the attitude is, I've got to be selfish, because by being selfish, I can survive, my business survives, and then I can actually provide services to my clients. So being selfish helps my clients. That's not my approach to business, and that's why I'm not successful in business. But there's a lot of things to make a person successful in business. It's not just that. It's attitude, it's approach, it's focus, it's sometimes common sense. So overall, but don't get me wrong, I've had a good life. I've been an IT consultant for most of my career since I was about 30. I was in IT, and I got to be an EUP manager. Went out to the next stage of consulting. I didn't like the chartered accountant group that I was working with, because it really was give advice, the best possible advice, and the best possible advice sometimes needs to be in their interest, and that's not my approach. The best possible advice to me is always in the customer's interest. Reports would be done, taken to large organisations, won't say which ones, and then they were told, no, that report is not acceptable. It's an independent report, so an independent report should be independent, and you produce that, but no, it has to go back for review. Then they get to review it and tell you what you can and can't say. So I saw one other manager get completely ropeable, because at the end of the day, he did an independent report, and the people said it's not acceptable. So had to adjust the report to suit the organisation. So if you ever see independent reports, take it with a grain of salt. And also the interesting one is the scope of what they're meant to do. So look at the independent reports, but ask what was the scope, because the scope might be, for example, the Northeast Link. The scope might not include certain things, the best possible outcome for all involved. So you've got to look at what the consultant's been asked to do in terms of scope. If it's outside the scope, and there's one that I was looking at the other day, it was the report which was for the introduction of the speed limit being 50 kilometres an hour, and the scope was the improvement because of the reduction in 50 kilometres per hour. When I read the report, now I'm no statistician, but when I read the report, I thought, well, this is written. It's titled everything, the benefits of the reduction 50 kilometres an hour. It did not take into account the losses that occurred. What were the negatives? Because what they did is they focused on, yes, there's been an improvement in the number of accidents that have occurred because of the reduction in the areas, but what they completely ignored in the report, because of scope, was that in the other areas where it maintained 60 kilometres an hour, there was actually an increase in casualties to about the same level as the reduction. And it sort of makes sense when you look at it. So what we're going to do is going to take all these roads, reduce them to 50 kilometres an hour. That's great. We'll reduce the casualties, injuries. But what happens is it pushes more people back onto the faster roads. More people on the faster roads increases the number of casualties and injuries and possibly deaths. So you've got to look at the total system, where you gain and where you lose. But if you do an independent report, somebody pays for that report, and the scope says, only look at the benefits of the reduction 50. Don't look at the other side of the coin, is, has there been a negative impact in some way? Because that might make the report look bad. And so you really do have to look at the reports and have a degree of skepticism, because ultimately it's business. Whoever's paying for the report gets the report that they want. If they don't like the report, you'll still get paid, but you'll never get repeat business. So as a businessman, can you afford not to get repeat business? So what we really need for independent reports is an independent body to do the reports on other things, not themselves, nothing related to them, so that they don't have a vested interest in getting that independent report done. If the government asks a body to do an independent report and pays that body, there's a vested interest, and those people have to turn around and provide the report that meets the needs of the paying organisation. So at one stage, at the same time I was going through all this consulting stuff, the editor of The Age turned around and said, and it cracked me up, he sort of said, this is based on the independent reports, and if you can't trust the independent reports, who can you trust? And that is the whole problem. Even the editor of The Age was not being realistic, or was he? Was he just pushing a barrow that suited their agenda? So I don't know. Maybe I'll say it freely, maybe I'm the naive one, because at the end of the day, I just thought he was naive in that statement. But perhaps when I look back, I was the naive one, because what he's doing is actually promoting the government line, doing what the advertisers, the government wants them to do. So, but I do think it's not all bad. It's not all bad. As life goes along, we go down one direction. It gets biased, it gets pushed in one direction. Then we go down another direction, it gets pushed. But ultimately it gets pushed backwards and forwards. And over the years, the decades, the centuries, I believe it becomes better. we're facing what could be a devastating outcome for this world in the future, and we turn around and try to do the best. I mean, if I look at nuclear energy in the 70s, I mean, the whole country fought to stop nuclear energy, and here we are 50 years later pushing for it again. Nobody seems to remember that the nuclear industry has a product, a waste product, that is just devastating. So I'm not for any political party. I think they've just got their own vested interests. But on a particular thing like nuclear energy, I just sort of think